Hello, good afternoon, everyone. If I sound tired or jet lagged, it's for a reason. I landed in Zurich at 11 a.m. this morning, and from the airport, I went to the hotel, dropped my stuff, and came directly to this event. For context, actually, a lot of people in my team are in Amsterdam through the rest of the week. And when I was planning that trip and I saw this DevFest happening, I was like, I'm going to make sure I do drop by, talk to all of you, see how this amazing event is happening, and get a lot of feedback and insights. Thank you. As Chanel mentioned, my name is Uttam Tripathi. I head the global programs for developer ecosystem at Google. I'm based out of Mountain View office. I've been at Google for almost 7 years now. I'll complete 7 years at Google in December. My journey at Google has taken me to 2 or 3 different offices. I started with Google in India. I was responsible for setting up developer relations for Google in that country. This is 2011. The mobile ecosystem was just getting started. In India, we were seeing a lot of traction. Android was really becoming popular. Then my role got expanded. I was looking at India and all of Southeast Asia. And since 2014, I've been in the global programs team in Mountain View. One of the first projects I worked on was the Launchpad program. It really helps us create a lot of opportunities and offerings for startups out there and help them be successful using Google's technologies. And since 2016, I've been leading the global team that works on all of these outreach programs. As was introduced, a part of my talk today is really to mirror and share what some of my own observations and learnings of Google's culture and how I feel and I see it really encourages a lot of innovation in the organization. And then when we are talking about this wider ecosystem of AI and machine learning really like gaining a lot of steam across the world, what is my observation of it happening within Google, and what are some of the tools out there for all the developers, startups, researchers out there to really benefit from that. So if you look at the history of Google, like 1998, like 20 years back, there was this flurry of like startups starting from the garage, like very typical of US West Coast culture, where you'll have like some folks getting started on an idea, building a quick prototype, trying to put it out there and building a business out of it. Google is one of those companies, but then there's Apple, which happened before us, HP, Box, and the list just goes on. If you fast forward to today, in fact, just a few weeks ago, we celebrated 20-year anniversary of Google. This is actually the picture from the same celebration we had in the Mountain View office. And going from a few dozen employees to 85,000 full-time employees across the world in 100 offices, a revenue of over $100 billion, and an annual growth rate of almost 25% revenue growth. How do you maintain a culture that was in that garage and mindset that you started your company with and still maintain it with 85,000 employees? And for us, it really boils down to 3 simple respects. And this is something that I see like really working every single day when we go to work. First is strong respect for the user. Having that serve the user mindset. Don't take user for granted, really focusing heavily on the privacy, data security, but also the user needs point of view. A good example of that is a developer product we released a couple of years ago called Firebase. We realized we were hearing from mobile app developers across the world, but if you are a mobile app developer and you have to come and build using Google's tool, the experience was fragmented, broken. Like you have to go to 10 different consoles, you have to get the SDK from this place and integrate it, really quite messy. How do you solve that? We started to do a lot of like focus group discussions, flying in representatives of developers from across the world, having them sit down with the product managers across the same room, and have them share their experiences. And making sure that it's not just US developers from the United States, but representatives from Europe, emerging markets, other parts of the world. That led to Firebase being built and developed. The same goes on for all of our consumer products. The second is deep care and respect for opportunity. Like when I talk about those big numbers in the previous slides, right, like $100 billion revenue, fast-growing business, that really throws in a lot of other potential opportunities out there. But how can you really make sure that you're not taking those opportunities for granted and really are very thoughtful in building solutions and products that you put out there? And while you're doing that, avoid any kind of conflict of interest that may come in. Confidentiality, things like GDPR, making sure that you are doing the best possible things on all of that. And finally, the third one, which is more internal, as you have this large organization of 85,000 employees, how can you really make sure that there's strong respect and support for each other? Because we are all operating in this industry where the opportunity is growing and becoming bigger and bigger. How can we support all of us in that journey? That, for me, leads to this innovation at Google. And here really is the middle pillar. Our founder, Larry Page, he had this concept introduced called toothbrush test. Who here has heard of toothbrush test is familiar? Anyone who knows about what the toothbrush test is? So the idea is, if you're thinking of building a product, can you build something like a toothbrush? A toothbrush is something that you use every single day. So there is that stickiness. A toothbrush also creates positive utility in your life. So if you are building products with that mindset, it really goes a long way to serving the user and really having deep engagement. A lot of things that I have personally observed is like how obsessed the company is around acquiring great talent. When I started managing people at Google almost 4 years ago, this was one of the toughest transitions for me, because you are not only working with the smartest people, now you have the responsibility of managing them, keeping them excited, giving them projects that they want to work on, and making sure that they stay within your team. Giving people a lot of flexibility on projects that they want to work on. There's this concept of 20%. Gmail, for example, was not a product that was formalized and built ground up. It was a 20% project of a couple of Googlers that really got a lot of traction within the organization. It was so popular that we decided to launch it externally. A couple of other things that stand out here is like mediocre thinking, like how can you not focus on incremental improvements, but more of 10x? Like how can we really go 10x in terms of our impact and reach? That, for me, is what the culture of Google that we talked about, the 3 respects, leads to this innovation. And over a period of time, in the last few years, we have seen this transcend into each of Google's billion user plus products. So if you look at the app ecosystem right now, there are 9 apps that have a billion plus users. 2 of them are from Facebook and Instagram. The other 7 are from Google. And I say 7.5 because one of my favorite products, Google Photos, currently has upward of 500 million users. And the estimate is by the end of this year or early next year, it's going to enter that billion user club. What's really also a binding factor across all of these is they are all now being powered by machine learning. We all love smart replies in our Gmail. When we take photos using Google and store in Google Photos, and we go back and try to search them, can you show me pictures from Zurich when I went on that boat ride? Google Photos surfaces all of those. And those are the kind of magical moments that we are able to provide to our users using power of machine learning. But technology is most powerful when everyone has the ability to use it. Like when we are talking about big concepts like AI and machine learning, it's really groundbreaking and revolutionary and more democratic if every single app developer out there has the tools, has the power, has the capability to use it in their own products. And that's our endeavor when we make a lot of tools available for developers like you out there. These tools include communities like Kaggle. Who here has heard about Kaggle? Great, so some hands going up, this is awesome. If you haven't heard about Kaggle, we want you to know about it. That's a place where you can find great data scientists. These are the places where you can find models, data sets. This is also a place where organizations throw competition and contests like this one. You can try to solve that, and like a lot of people also use this as a channel for hiring talent. Kaggle is a great place to really meet more data scientists working in an area that you are interested in, identifying data sets and models that you want to work on. The second is the community that we are trying to build through a set of programs from Google's side, going from Google Developer Groups or GDGs to Women Tech Maker, to things like the Launchpad program or Experts program. Each one of them are communities that are near you. You can really meet a lot of like-minded developers and get started. Events like DevFest is possible only because of power of communities like this. And in this season, like we have this DevFest happening here in Zurich, but we have 500 DevFests happening across the world. And it's only because of the power of community that we can pull off things like this. The other tool that I want to talk about briefly is Google Cloud Platform. A lot of tools, infrastructure, and other applications available through GCP really makes AI and machine learning useful for enterprises and developers across the world. And when you're using Google Cloud Platform, the thing that really stands out, it's the same infrastructure that is powering those 7.5 billion plus user applications that your app will be running on. So when it comes to scalability, security, you're running on the same infrastructure that is powering Gmail, Google Photos. That for me, like really mind-boggling. And there are a set of building blocks that become available, from Cloud Vision to speech to things like AutoML. This is really my favorite, because it really makes it easy for anyone to build machine learning models. There's an easy set of UX and UI feature over there where you can upload images, you can tag them, you can train the models, and you can get going on that. To things like Cloud TPUs that have TensorFlow integrated into it and really are custom designed to run AI and machine learning based applications. And if you look at this whole ecosystem, like AI-powered innovation is happening across industries, going from predictive maintenance to collaborative workspaces to things like Waymo and self-driving car to more smart assistants and things like that. I'm going to talk about a few examples that we see. Ocado, UK's largest online-only grocery store. They have been using AI and machine learning in their customer support. When you send them emails, they are using AI and machine learning to figure out what is the priority level with which they need to get back to you. For example, if you send them an email with "thank you, your service was great," that probably doesn't require the same level of urgency to reply to versus like, where is my order? My order is missing. So they're using AI and machine learning to really prioritize a lot of that. If you look at Rolls-Royce, they're using AI and machine learning. When the large vessels are navigating in deep sea, they're using AI and machine learning to track and avoid objects and avoid collisions that may happen while they are navigating the deep sea. To things like our own data centers, where we have used power of AI and machine learning to reduce energy consumption. A lot of energy goes in keeping data centers cool. And we acquired this company, DeepMind, a couple of years ago, and using their algorithm, we started to, like when we have managers who are managing energy at data centers, DeepMind's algorithm started making suggestions that maybe this is a time for you to take this action, maybe lower the requirement of cooling, and then bring it back at a later point in time. Initially, those decisions were suggestive. Managers were making those decisions. But we observed that almost 90% of the time, managers were making the same decision that was being offered to them. And therefore, over a period of time, we really gave them a window from 5 minutes to 2 minutes to really having machines take over all of these data centers, and really led to like 40% reduction in energy consumption. It's great for environment, it's great for the profitability of the company, because all of these savings get passed back to the GCP users. If you look at flooding, still continues to be one of the big challenges that a lot of countries across the world face. India, for example, if you look at fatalities and deaths that happen because of flooding, almost 30% of them happen just in India. This is a problem that teams in Google across Mountain View, Israel, and India got behind, tried to tackle. On the left side, you will see publicly available data of flooding happening in a river in Hyderabad, India. on the right side, you see a more precise, high-resolution prediction of what the flooding would mean using Google's data and our own algorithm. As you can see, like if there is a government body trying to manage for an upcoming flooding using the data on the left versus right, the right one really helps them focus on what are the more flood-prone regions to focus on. And these are the kind of use cases we see happening across the world with the power of AI and machine learning and the innovation that drives. As more and more companies, and I was looking at the agenda of this DevFest happening here in Zurich, like there were so many talks that were focused on just this topic. As more and more companies and partners are getting on board, this is really leading into creating a huge ecosystem of data scientists, tooling partners, from system integrators to app developers. And I have spent 7 years in developer relations at Google, and one of the things I understood, like really in the beginning of my career, is all the use cases out there that needs to be solved can't be solved by the big companies. Like Google can't build applications or users or try to cover all the use cases. That's why we need app developers, and that's why we make our platform available. All the white spaces that you see here needs to be filled by partners and ecosystem partners out there. Finally, this is something like really important, and I want to make sure that we cover this as I wrap up the talk, is AI principles. We put this out 2 or 3 months ago when there was a lot of debate about AI and machine learning and the use cases. A lot of work that you will see coming out from Google's side really focuses on these principles, starting from use cases that are socially beneficial. Like if you are trying to build a solution, is it really creating that positive utility? And is it socially beneficial or not? Trying to focus on use cases that avoid creating or reinforcing biases. This is super important. Like the way AI works is you use historical data to train your model to make future predictions. But if your historical data is biased, all of your training models will start to get biased. One quick example of this. We were trying to train our models using a lot of historical pictures to predict a marriage photo. Like you throw in a photo, and the output should be, is this a marriage wedding photo, yes or no? The problem was, all of those photos had Christian weddings. So when you start to throw in pictures from Asia, or from Africa, or from other parts of the world, it would just say, that's a gathering of people. It won't predict that is a photo of a wedding. And therefore, for your model to work properly, you need to have more diverse data sets. The other example of this, and this actually became really viral on Facebook. Who has heard about the video of racist soap dispenser? Okay, so a couple of folks have. Those of you who haven't, this was a video of a soap dispenser installed in one of the public toilets. I don't remember which country who built it, but the problem was, if a person of color will wave his or her hand under the soap dispenser doesn't dispense the soap. If a white person waves their hand under it, it does dispenses the soap. The problem was that not the company who built that soap dispenser were racist or biased. The problem was maybe they did not have anyone, person of color in their team to test it. And that leads to you creating products that can't be used. Like for me, it's the right thing to do, but you are also really alienating a lot of your potential users, and like they will not be your users again. And therefore, as we go on this bandwagon, like AI and machine learning, it's really important that the data set that we are using are avoiding biases and not reinforcing any of that. Third is really build and test it for safety. Like when you are giving more and more control to these automated systems, are they able to handle those unexpected edge cases and fail safely if needed? Finally, be accountable to people. Be accountable to scrutiny. Be accountable to questioning. We take this with a lot of respect on our side as well, right? Like a lot of responsibility. There are occasions where we don't do the right thing in the first time. We make mistakes. But my team teams within Google are really open on feedback that, hey, this product is not working, these predictions are wrong. And in a lot of products, you actually have the ability to go back and suggest what is the right prediction. Google Translate is a great example, where you try to translate a phrase from language A to language B, the translation doesn't work for you. You can say, look, hey, this is actually not the translation that really works for me. This one is. And as more and more people suggest that, the algorithm picks up. Finally, incorporating privacy design principles while you're building and not trying to retrofit it towards the end. Uphold high standards of scientific excellence and focusing on all of those use cases as you are creating solutions. So really want to make sure that I focus on AI principles, because as we are trying to create a lot of solutions, this is something that Google's perspective is for AI and machine learning use cases. So that's my talk. Thank you so much for your time. It was really a pleasure to be here at the DevFest. This is one of the really amazing opportunities to connect with all of you out there for us in my entire team. And a lot of us are actually traveling to different DevFests, showing up, doing talks, but more importantly, connecting with people and talking to them. I intentionally kept the talk short because I'm actually very happy to answer any questions that may be from the audience or any one of you. So thank you so much. Happy to take questions.
So Reggie, are we ready for questions? We found the second microphone.
Thanks for the chat, Uttam. The first question, I guess really one question I have is, you mentioned a lot of different ideas that Google comes up with, and small teams work on it, and they have the, I guess they're autonomous in terms of like working on what they want to work on. How do you come up with those small products or ideas? Is there a certain sense of user validation, user interviews, like an agile process involved while coming up with those ideas, or is it just like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are 2 or 3 things that I think stands out. One is, and you alluded to this, there's tremendous amount of flexibility on like what people work on. We have a concept called OKRs, like objective key result. That's a template every employee uses every quarter when they're setting goals for their future quarter. The fun, or this might be surprising news is, it's really a top-down thing. So a lot of people in my team, they've come up with their draft OKRs, and I just review it, instead of me setting their OKRs. And that, for me, is really powerful, because that really drives a lot of innovation coming from individuals. A couple of other things that stand out, like really focusing on user, like trying to make sure we are connected with user and getting that real-time feedback. We also have a concept called dog food. Who here has heard about dog food? Some of you have. Before we publicly release any product, in many cases, that product is internally used by a lot of Googlers. So for example, before a next version of Gmail is launched externally, Googlers will spend months and months using that, testing that, and if there are rough edges, they are the first one to face that problem and try to fix it before we put it in front of the user. So instead of building and launching it, we build it, use it ourselves. If it's problematic, we try to fix it, and then we launch it externally. A lot of other things that you mentioned, like using Agile methodology and Scrum, yes, those best practices get used from across engineering teams to teams. But for me, these are the 3, 4 things that stand out. Again, like the 20% thing is really powerful if you think of it. Like, you can use 20% of your time to work on any project. It might be completely unrelated to your team that you are on, and that's fine. That really leads to a lot of interesting use cases, sometimes a full product, sometimes interesting features that get embedded into like existing products. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, but this time you put your mouth right here.
That better? Okay. It's a follow-up question on what you said. I'm a bit interested in knowing how teams work together in Google, because in Shopify, Pivotal, Spotify, I've heard they have mixed teams. So in one team, they'll have a designer, a PM, an engineer, a product owner, and then they work together, and then they have like scrums and whatnot. Is that similar thing at Google as well?
Yeah, very similar to that. So we have like hybrid teams. We'll try to bring in like different skill sets that needs to roll out a product. Teams are product focused with like product managers, engineers, UX designers, QA, all of the folks working together. Awesome.
More questions? No?
Actually, I have a question.
Go ahead.
We've been here for 2 days. We've seen very interesting talks by people, also on using Google products, for example, the AutoML that you mentioned. Yeah. We saw an interesting talk today already. So you're, through this GDG, are helping us to get to know your products. How can we help you? How can we as developers in the field help you?
This is a great question. There are 2 or 3 things we request for. And we really focus on this when we do our global summit at Google I/O, when we invite a lot of our community leaders. But we want to get this message actually much wider. One of the things as part of this 1-week trip I'm hoping to do is like actually write like a Medium post. But this question comes up so often, we want to actually write a Medium post and get it out there. There are 3 things that we really want to ask from each one of you. One is, like, we see huge power. Let me step back a little bit. Like, the reason I've stayed in Google now for almost 7 years, like, I think Google's mission of organizing world's information and making it universally accessible is really very relevant and very powerful. And the way I see it in my job is, like, all the communities that we work with, I see them as knowledge bodies. Like, each one of you are, as an individual, is a knowledge body, but your community is a knowledge body too, right? Like, you have so much insights within your community, so many great ideas, etc. One of the things we want to take as the next step is how can we make sure that, for example, the GDG in Zurich is connected with GDG in Seoul, so that you know what's happening with developers in that different region, and learning from them and them learning from you. So how can we really go from like really strong engaged communities, which I would suggest we are in a stage, to an idea of connected communities, where like communities across the world, we know what's happening, and we're not just improving ourselves through events like DevFest, but we are also engaging with communities. Like GDG today is a network of 800 chapters across the world. My hypothesis is individual chapters are not taking full advantage of that power of network. We are able to leverage like the community in a city, but not across the globe. So how can we really get that going? The second idea is diverse communities. And when I say diversity, right, like for me, diversity is across multiple areas. Like, yes, gender diversity is a problem, but like diversity of ideas, and ideas on both sides of like political spectrum, whatever, ethnic diversity, language diversity, diversity of ideas. Because when each one of you, or some of you, when you build products, you're trying to build products for users out there, it's not a homogeneous ecosystem. It's not a homogeneous audience group that you're going to target. Your audience is going to be very heterogeneous. So if these communities are your testing beds where you want to get feedback, they need to be really diverse. So help us create a really diverse community ecosystem. And finally, feedback. Like, and I was talking to you, right, like earlier, Chanel, we do see, like Google really, like we see us very active in community, and we get called for that. Like, hey, we see you really out there, you're trying to support communities, it's all great. We take that with a lot of humbleness, but what really help us stay on track is honest feedback and timely feedback. We don't want to be in an echo chamber where we are making mistakes after mistakes, be it our programs, be it our products, but we're in an echo chamber where we're not seeing that feedback coming to us. So at any point you see like a program not working for you, a product not working for you, any of those things, give us feedback. So help us create connected communities, help us create really diverse communities, and give us valuable feedback. All of these things internally helps me get the company goals met as well, because really deeply engaged with all of you, your feedback helps us create great products. Does that answer your question?
Very much so. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? If not so, thank you so much, Uttam, for coming here, for talking to us, also for giving us insight in why what we're doing here is so important and how we can help each other. I wish you bon voyage for your next trip, wherever that might be, and